Hey, Ann, how are you? Welcome back, everybody. It's another installment of Ask Eddie and Ann. And this is how are you, Ann? I know you had some little things happening with you medically this week. Not medically,
Yeah,
dentally.
mentally. Yes. No, I'm feeling much better. So I had a past couple days have been really good. So and I slept like 9 hours last night. So I'm really feeling good.
Okay, very good. Kathleen and I kind of spontaneously went out last night to celebrate our wedding anniversary, which was not technically last night, but very recent. And we went and saw the Barkays. Do you know the Barkays? The
No.
the Barkays are like this classic old soul and funk band that have been. They were once upon a time they were Otis Redding's backup band.
Oh, cool.
So they have been around forever, and James Alexander is the only remaining member of the original Barkays, and he was, it's such, there's always a little noir something in it, right? He was the guy like Waylon Jennings on the ill-fated Buddy Holly flight. He was the guy who got left behind in the airplane when it crashed into the lake, and Otis Redding and his band were all killed in this plane crash. And James Alexander, the bass player, was the guy who didn't go on the plane. And he is still with the band and still performing to this day. So
Wow.
that'll give you an idea of how young he was when he was with the band. Because, I mean, he's like Pops up there on stage, but just fantastic. We had a blast. We had a serious dose of funk freak show on the dance floor last night. So we had a very, very good time. So that's it. And I guess we should tell people this is, I think, the only time we have done this early. Like, it's
This
morning. We're recording
yes.
this in the morning.
Yeah, on Saturday morning, which is very unusual for us because I mean, we've done like late afternoon before, but this is by far the earliest that we
This is
do
by
it.
far the earliest. So it'll be curious to see if there's any difference. Like we're not fully awake. Maybe my brain won't be completely engaged since I'm still kind of funked out from the Barcays. But let's give it a shot. Why not?
Okay. So just one thing
Oh,
before we
wait.
wait, wait. Yeah.
Before we start, let's get it out of the way up top. What'd you think of the end of Better Call Saul? And
You want to
everybody who's watching who hasn't watched the show and thinks now they want to watch the show, turn us off right now because you're going to get spoilers.
Okay, so I'll do this when we're done talking about it so people know when they can turn the sound back on.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Oh my God, it was amazing. It was amazing. It's what I wanted. I really wanted that. I have to say, the thing that really broke my heart was the final flashback with his brother, Chuck, because it just, when he said before, at the hearing, when he said, uh, that Chuck was limited, but he should have tried harder. It just broke my heart. Because to me, that's the real tragedy of the show, is just that broken familial relationship and just how everything spiraled from there.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was very, very satisfying, and I don't read a lot of reviews. I don't, I don't need that. But it was interesting that so many people were obsessed over whether it would be a happy or an unhappy ending, as though such a thing was possible with
Yeah.
this show. It wasn't going to be a happy ending. And so, it. But I loved what Vince Gilligan said when he said all we cared about was creating a satisfying ending that did justice to the characters, and that's exactly what we got. I thought it was tremendous, and the thing I really like about that show, and I don't want to be hyperbolic about this, but when you commit to watching the full length of that show, it's about as sophisticated as storytelling gets these
Hmm.
days. I mean, the fact that they can do this and not spoon feed the audience or wait around for people or recap everything so you can figure it out. They're just rolling, and at times it becomes like a stream of consciousness thing where you're just jumping between time frames, and it all holds together emotionally if you commit to the show, right? You know where you are. And I thought that last episode was really brilliant in how they brought back a lot of characters that everybody needed to see at least once more in the show. You know, like the flashback with Mike in the desert, and you know, bringing Jesse back for that great scene in the rain outside Saul's office, which was nice, putting him and Kim together the
Yeah.
only time. Anyway, I just felt the storytelling was just phenomenal, and the one weird noir connection I have with it is in the end, um, Jimmy reminded me so much of Harry Fabian from Night in the City.
I can
Be,
see that totally.
you know, because he was such a hustler, and he just tried so hard, and then at the end he makes this sacrifice, you know, to save this woman, to show that he was capable of love in the only way he could at that point, and with all the mess he'd gotten himself into. And it just reminded me of the end of Night in the City, you know, where Widmark comes out of hiding to basically reveal himself, to draw the bad guys away and all that stuff. It had some of that same feeling to me, the end of the show, and it was really good. Okay, there, we got that out of the way.
I just want to say one more thing though. Like, I did consider that a happy ending.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people said it was bittersweet in this, like, but for me, that kind of taking personal responsibility, because that's the only way you can grow, is that you have to acknowledge, you know, the things that you've done. And he was really making a living amends, right? He couldn't go back and apologize to Chuck and to Howard and stuff, but he could make a living amends by going to prison and facing and doing it that way. And I also really liked the final scene, just with them sharing a smoke in the exact same way they had in the first episode, and it's kind of, and that the only color being the flame of the cigarette lighter and the cherry on the cigarette, and just how her hand is shaking and he puts his hand over hers to steady her. It's just like, that was beautiful.
it was great, and yes, that's exactly what I mean about how sophisticated this storytelling is that they could build to a moment like that where literally nothing is really happening and everything is happening at the same time, and you gotta give your characters space, you know, to grow, so that those silences and those pauses mean so much to an audience watching it. It was really, really good. And also, you know, lastly, when you talked about the lighting of the cigarette and how that became the only color in there, not only is it sophisticated in terms of its approach to telling a, you know, a novelistic story, but it's a really coolly directed show. I mean, what they do visually and the way they play around with color and all that stuff is really, really inventive. I mean, simple stuff like just shooting all this stuff with Gene in black and white, so you always knew where you were, as though, given how different he looked as Gene, you really didn't need the help of having it in black and white. But it really added to the whole thing, and I just, yeah.
Yeah, and then the whole idea of all the color had gone out of his life.
Precisely. Anyway, we have our first feline guest.
And by the way, we're done talking about Better Call Saul. Yes.
Mystery guest, enter and sign in, please.
And that is Emily.
That is Emily. I was going to say that was Emily. Okay. We should get going. We've got some good questions here, and we've done the preamble with Saul enough. Okay. You want to start us off?
Sure. Actually, one thing, when this is airing, North City, Chicago is starting tomorrow at the Music Box Theater, and you will be there over the weekend.
I will be. In fact, I will be. We've gotten a lot of good publicity. I've given a lot of interviews this week. Looking forward to the festival, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in Chicago. So that will be great. I think I've gotten a lot of comments from people who are very disappointed that you won't be there, Anne.
Oh, so nice.
You have your fan club now, and they want you to make an appearance. So one of these days we'll get you to one of the satellite festivals.
That would be fun.
You know,
I would enjoy that.
your old stomping grounds in Seattle, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I can't go back to Seattle, but we can't get into that. There's legal reasons.
Oh, really? Ann Goodman. Ann Goodman can't go back to Seattle. I can't go back to Albuquerque. Okay, that's for a later episode. Okay.
That's great. This is from Calvin B. Can you tell me the release date for repeat performance? No, God, I'm on the wrong. I am on the wrong year.
You're on the wrong year because repeat performance has been out for like 2 years. So, see, it is early. It is early in the morning, and yeah.
Do you have the questions up? Can you read?
I have the questions. Yeah, I can read question one. It's from Jonathan in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He says, first, Eddie, I want to thank you so much for the shout out about the American Thesaurus of Slang I sent you. It's right over here somewhere on my shelf, right over there now. I'm currently watching the August 11th episode. There was a question about annual memberships or donation reminders, and I'd wondered the same thing. I think it's great you keep it open-ended, but I want to be sure to remember to donate every year. So I just set a reminder on my calendar to donate every November 28th, which is Gloria Graham's birthday. I thought it might be fun for others who want a reminder to do the same. Pick a favorite Film Noir star and set an annual reminder. Maybe there could be a way to acknowledge that on the donation. We do have a little note thing when you make a donation, if you want to drop a little note. So if you want to say it's in honor of August 6th, Robert Mitchum's birthday, Jonathan, I appreciate that very much. That's a nice thought. Marjorie Tucker in back east, when we mentioned that we don't police this as rigorously as perhaps we should, Marjorie was inspired to stick a big bill inside a card and send it to us. So that's old school. She just put the money right inside the card and said, gee whiz, I didn't know, here's my donation. Good job, Marjorie.
I like that. We should get some in a brown paper bag.
Yeah, that's what we need here. We need a pile of money in a brown paper bag. That would be good.
Exactly.
Okay. Oh, did you find the questions, or do you want me to keep going?
I'm on the correct year now.
Okay, very good.
And this is Paul C. from Superior, Wisconsin. I've been a big fan of the Film Noir Foundation and its incredible work over the years. That being said, what do you see as the future of film noir? How do you see younger generations react to these incredible movies?
I don't. Paul, I appreciate that question, and it's something that we obviously think about quite a bit. And you remember how years ago at the festivals, I would get up there and talk about saving these films, and then it became saving, I only wanted to do Noir City in movie theaters that, were at risk of not going out of business necessarily, but, that needed vintage theaters that needed resurrection. And then, of course, it became, well, now how do we save the audience? And I have to be somewhat optimistic about it. Totally contrary to my normal credo about the world today, which is I see no reason for optimism. But I just know that when I was growing up and first learning about this stuff, there was no community. There was no community of not just film noir fans, but a real community of movie fans. And now I have to say, thanks in large measure to the internet, as we're proving right this second, people are connected and sharing their enthusiasm for this kind of stuff. The key is, does that somehow filter up to the people that actually control the films, because you're all following the stories about how the dark side of streaming is that if that's the only way you get the films, then at some point the people who own the services can just turn off the tap, and then you won't be able to see. Which is why we've had this conversation a bunch of times. Why physical media is so important, but the actual communal experience of seeing these movies in a movie theater, that's a tough one. We'll see how it goes. I mean, this issue is playing out right now. We're going to do our part because now that COVID is subsiding, we're going back into the theaters. We'll see if people come out, and I'm hoping that some of them are young.
Yeah. And I wanted to put in a quick plug since we were talking about streaming. On Canopy, which is free with a library card, there's a film called Death in Buenos Aires, which Ted and I watched. He'd watched it once before, and then he wanted to watch that last Saturday. So he texted me a picture of the guy who I'd seen in something before, and who's very good looking. So, okay. But it is so noir, Eddie. You've totally got you. And I don't want
Death in Buenos Aires. I'm there. I'm totally there. I may be watching that tonight.
I just don't want to say anything about it because it has a very clever story, and I don't want to give anything away. But it is.
And is it a new film or is it an old film?
It's a new film, and it is. I would definitely call it a neo-noir. And it's kind of interesting because basically this older detective is using a younger male detective, and it's set in the 80s is sort of a honey trap to find out who had killed a prominent member of society. And that's all I want to say, because I'm so afraid I'll give something away. And it was.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for the tip. I will definitely check that out. There's so many really good movies coming from Argentina. They had a renaissance in the last 10 or 12 years. It kind of started with Fabian Belinsky, who did Nine Queens and El Aura, and then The Secrets in Their Eyes and Carancho and all these really wild tales. That was a good one. I really enjoy the movies out of Argentina, not just the ones from the 50s that we've rescued, but the newer ones as well.
Yeah, and there's a really good horror film from there, supernatural horror film called Terrified, which is up on Shudder, which scared the hell out of me. And I don't really get scared by horror films very much, but that one was like, yeah, that was good. It was truly like I was truly frightened, especially with supernatural stuff. I tend not to get scared, but that one was good. And then there's also a film called Angel that Ted and I watched, which has the guy who's a young man in this one was also a character in that one, and that's highly recommended as well.
Fantastic. Boy, you give people so many things to watch. It's great. I don't know how you do it. I mean, I can't watch that much stuff,
I mean, I basically just watch something with Ted every Saturday night. That's about it for my movie watching, unless I'm sick or something. But I also worked in video stores for 17 years. So like I'm good at recommending things because that's just something I enjoy doing.
And we should let people know that the Ted you're referring to is Ted Whipple, who is the webmaster for the Film Noir Foundation and is in charge of, he manages all the websites, the Film Noir Foundation website, the Noir City website, and many others as well. But, it does a great job. Very elegant presentation that Ted puts forth on our behalf, and much appreciated.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, it's always such a pleasure when we get the festival site northcity.com posted. It's always fun to see what images he's captured and how he's laid it out. It's always gorgeous.
Yeah, I have to tell you, working with very, very talented, creative people is so gratifying because, I'll spill the beans right here because this is a very select audience, I'm actually working on a book project to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Noir City Festival in San Francisco. So I'll be putting out like a souvenir book, right? And so revisiting all of the history of the festival has been quite an experience, because it reminded me how in like the first for like the first 4 years I did everything myself, everything. And then it's just wonderful how the festival was like this magnet, or this flame that just attracted all these very talented, competent, wonderful people like yourself and Ted, and Bill Selby and Michael Cronenberg, who does all the programs and is now does the layout for the magazine and everything. And it all happened very organically, so it's really cool. I'm having a good time putting all this info together. Anyway,
That's cool. So it's your turn, right?
yes.
You're on three.
Barney in San Francisco says, Turner used to show the great noir film The Devil Thumbs a Ride, but it hasn't been on their schedule for years, as far as I know. Do you know if it's fallen out of copyright? Would love to see the film restored in a nice Blu-ray edition. Well, I can tell you, Barney, the film has been restored, but your odds of seeing it in a nice Blu-ray edition are not so good at the moment. The Devil Thumbs a Ride is part of what is called the Abend decision, which has to do with the underlying literary rights to a film, and if those rights are not renewed or a deal is not struck with the heirs or whatever, studios tend to give up on those movies, and The Devil Thumbs a Ride is one of those. However, as a result of that decision, Warner Brothers, which owns the RKO library, and that is an RKO film, they deposited all the material from the film at the Library of Congress, which is a good thing. It means they're giving up on it, but the good news is then you can restore it, because now you have access to all of that because it's public. And so we did that. We contributed to the restoration, which was done by the Library of Congress. The only problem is the restored version of The Devil Thumbs a Ride can't be shown in North America. It's Warner Brothers, or Warner Media now won't allow that for legal reasons. I have shown that restoration in Bologna at the Il Cinema Ritrovato Festival over there, and but you're not supposed to show it in North America.
Do you think they'll release a Blu-ray overseas?
That would be the ideal situation, and if they just so happened to accidentally make it region free, that could probably be a good thing. I mean, when I wrote,
I know I have an all region player, which I broke down and bought because of all the Danish stuff, because I've had import so much.
Of course. Yeah, it's interesting. When I wrote my book on Gun Crazy, which a lot of people I'm sure are familiar with in English, but the book was originally written for the French market, not the English market, and a great company called Wildside in Paris put that out in a massive deluxe edition that contained a Blu-ray of the film. And they were allowed to do that because, and I'm not telling tales now, I don't think. They were allowed to do that because Warner Brothers didn't have the rights to that film in Europe. And then when they made the Blu-ray, they just made it region free. So back then there was no Blu-ray of Gun Crazy available. And so they made one available. If you bought this tome for 65 or 70 euros, whatever it was, you could get a copy of the film on Blu-ray. Subsequently, Warner Brothers did issue a Blu-ray of Gun Crazy, but that's probably the best bet, is that eventually it will come out in Europe. I hope I'd be involved with it somehow. I mean, I know a few companies that I would like to see them release it, but anyway, Barney, the short answer is lawyers. The short answer is lawyers are holding up the revival of that film.
And if people wanted to buy the American edition of your book, Gun Crazy, where would they do that?
They could do that directly from me at Blackpool Productions. That's my publishing imprint, and that has its own website as well. So if you just go to Blackpool Productions, you can order the book directly. I, I I don't think we sell it. I don't think I sell any of my Blackpool stuff on Amazon. We sell the annual and stuff, from the Film Noir Foundation, but I can only support Amazon so much.
Yeah, in the magazine, print issues of North City Magazine are available from Amazon, but only going about 4 issues?
Yeah,
Not
yes, the
not the
one,
back
yeah,
catalog.
right, the one that starts with "Get Carter" on the cover with Mike
Yeah,
Hodges is the first
those.
print issue, and then the Gloria Graham issue and the Nightmare Alley issue, and the next one, which is coming soon and is absolutely fantastic. So I'm pretty excited about that. Okay, I can tell that our next question, Anne, from Katie in Eugene, Oregon, is one of those questions that I love. So I'm teasing you, Katie. It it's lovely, and this is why it's good to have a film community, because we're going to get an answer for Katie. You want me to read this?
You can read it, yeah.
Okay, all right. Katie says, I grew up in downtown Los Angeles in the 1940s and often went to our local theater in the Ambassador Hotel with my folks. There was a theater in the Ambassador Hotel? In 1948 or 49, I saw a crime drama at the end of which one of the bad guys got thrown into a huge tank of gasoline or water or natural gas that were in downtown LA at the time. The tanks that went up and down depending on how full they were. Well, this character's name was Gus, and he was a William Bendix type, if not Bendix himself. It has stuck in my memory because every time Mama served asparagus, my daddy would say, "Can we spare Gus?" Sounds like my father. Anyway, I'd be so grateful if someone would tell me the title of this probably B film. Okay, so it's a guy, and I have to tell you that most of the questions like this, like the one we had recently about the burning bedroom with the child in it, and the
Mm-hmm.
woman has to save the kid. Most of these revolve around some dire incident that engraves itself in your memory. It's
Mm-hmm.
somebody dying in some weird way is usually what sticks in people's minds. And I don't know why it is that the falling in a vat of something is the most common one that people are like, I remember this guy fell in a vat of whatever, and Gus, I have to tell you, it does sound familiar, but I just know that Charles McGraw played guys named Gus a few times, but I don't recall McGraw ever falling in a vat of anything. And I
Yeah.
think his Gus's were usually the good guys. Usually, when he was Gus, he was playing a good guy, like a cop or something. So I'm not entirely sure about this one, and I have to be honest, Katie. I sometimes get confused because I start mixing it up with stuff in books. Because like I know that A Kiss Before Dying, the book,
Mm-hmm.
Bud, the psychopath, falls into a vat of. That's how the book ends. But he falls into the rock quarry. Oh, sorry, spoiler for those who haven't seen that movie. I should just stop talking
Yeah.
now.
And
Spoil everything.
the Uninvited, the book has kind of a adjacent type of almost death in there, actually, at the end of it. And then, no, the only thing I can think of with people falling into vats is oddly two Vincent Price things. One is The House on Haunted Hill, but also he's in like a I think it was Richard III. I think it was Universal Studios, and he gets like drowned in a vat of beer. I think in a
Oh,
barrel.
there you go.
Yeah, so like that's the only
It's
things
funny
I
how
know.
these things just pinball around inside your head. Like the minute you said he falls in a vat of beer, I'm thinking, yeah, that's the scene in Berlin Express where the guy is in the big beer vat and they're trying to
Yeah,
shoot him, and it's like,
yeah. And
so
the
it.
thing that traumatized me as a child was we were watching Houdini with Tony Curtis on TV, and how he like drowns in the water tank thing. And that gave, he's doing the water trick that he
Yeah,
really didn't
yeah.
do. And, and that, like, I had nightmares about it. And then when I found out, like, as an adult, that that's not what happened to him, I was so pissed. I felt like writing the studio a letter saying, "You gave me trauma when I was a child, and that thing haunted me for years, and it wasn't friggin' true."
That's the job of movies, is to traumatize people. I mean, part of the job, it forges you. It makes you into who you are. Like, anyway, well, my hope, Katie, is that somebody watching this on Facebook knows what this is, and I hope you're watching, and then maybe you'll see the answer pop up in the comments.
Yeah.
Because I can't. If that doesn't happen, I'll do some research. But
Okay.
I mean, working backwards from film noirs with characters named Gus.
How many can there be?
Set in
Uh,
LA. I mean, she is giving us more information than a lot of people do.
yeah, and it was around 1948, so there was
Yeah,
that too.
48, 49. It's in LA. There's a guy named Gus. He is William Bendix, or looks like William Bendix. I mean, we should just go to Bendix's filmography and look it up. Anyway, okay.
Okay, so this is Richard from New York. Even though these films are known as comedy films, could they possibly be regarded as comic film noir? The films are Bud Abbott and Lou Costello in the 1942 Universal picture Who Done It, and Red Skelton and MGM's Whistling in the Dark, Whistling in Dixie, and Whistling in Brooklyn. Just wondering, I think that especially Who Done It, in addition to being suspenseful, does have certain qualities of film noir, such as the air of foreboding, as well as the dark shadows that permeate the film.
Interesting. People are they will never get off the is there comedy noir. That's like
Yeah.
that's vitally important to a lot of people.
Yeah. And I just put out a short about that too that you can watch on our YouTube channel.
But I will say that I just think it's indicative of why it was an artistic movement, because the look of film noir seeped into everything in Hollywood at that time, including the comedies. So, and the Whistling in the Dark, the Red Skelton stuff is interesting because those films were directed by Sylvan Simon, who was a comedic director who then would go on. He directed I Love Trouble with Frank Auton.
Oh,
They created a company together that only made two films, and I Love Trouble was one of them. Cornell Productions, and Sylvan Simon was a comedy guy, and he directed those, but he clearly had a feel for the atmosphere and the iconography of the crime stories and the shadows and everything. He understood it completely, and oddly enough, Whistling in the Dark looks more like a film noir than I Love Trouble, which is a film noir, and I guess it's a detective story more than a noir, really, but a fun movie. So yeah, I mean, I am aware of all of these things, the noir style seeping into all these other genres, but I won't ever call them examples of noir because they're parodies of noir. Okay, so
okay.
this is Tom in Costa Mesa, California. Uh, Says, I've heard you revel at the wisecrack comebacks in noir films. One of my favorite examples is in the film Impact, and it reflected the prejudicial attitude toward Asians prevalent at that time. Charles Coburn, okay, as Lieutenant Tom Quincy, and Ella Raines as Marcia Peters, about, about 90 minutes into Impact, are trying to locate. You okay, Ann?
Mhm.
they're trying to locate an important witness, which is Anna May Wong, who plays Su Lin Chung. They find her in Chinatown, knock at the door. Philip Ahn answers, and Coburn, of course, proceeds in broken pidgin English. You ah sing, you understand, you Chinese English, blah, blah, blah. And of course, Philip Ahn answers in perfect English. Yes, I also speak French, Italian, and Hebrew, which caused Tom to do a fist pump and say, you tell him. And then, of course, Philip Ahn reverts to his shtick, his Charlie Chan shtick. Anyway, so that was a long story to ask. What are some of your favorite wisecrack comebacks in noir films? But before we leave that, I mean that shtick has been in a lot of films,
Yeah.
right? Probably my favorite being Victor Sen Yung in Woman on the Run, where he runs the club in Chinatown, and everybody assumes that he's and he speaks better English than anybody in the movie, and that was a thing that they were consciously doing in the film. And I remember also in John Milius in The Wind and the Lion had a scene at a dinner at the White House where John Huston is playing, I think, the Secretary of State or something, and he mocks their Asian guests by saying, knifey forky. And then, of course, the guy he's talking to gets up and delivers a speech in perfect English, and it's funny for all of the sense that Hollywood was totally improper and incorrect in dealing with this stuff. There are a lot of examples where they're trying to subvert it and show that ingrained racism is kind of stupid. So anyway, do you have a favorite wisecrack comeback in Film Noir?
100%. It's from the Maltese Falcon when Joel Cairo says to Sam Spade, you certainly have a smooth explanation for everything, and he just clips back, what do you want me to do, learn to stutter?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Of course, my all-time favorite wisecrack comeback in noir, this may come as a surprise, is Jan Sterling in Ace in the Hole, right? When Kirk Douglas encourages her to put on a show and go pray in church for her husband who's buried in the mountain, she says, I don't pray, kneeling bags my nylons. Still, leave it to Billy Wilder. It's still the greatest single comeback line. I don't pray, kneeling bags my nylons.
Yeah, and and another one I really love is actually Joan Crawford, and she's plays an older woman who's moved to Hawaii because her husband's just died. I can't remember the name of it. I think Jan Sterling's actually in it, and but there's this younger man who's kind of trying to seduce her, so he comes into her house, and she wakes up and he's made coffee, and he asks her, how do you like your coffee? And she says, alone.
Yeah, that's great. It's good when you can get it down to one word, a one-word comeback. That's pretty great.
Joan, so just a look on her face and their tone of voice was just priceless.
Fabulous. Yeah, there are a lot of them. I like for its poetic value, I was always fond of the line in Laura when Clifton Webb asks Dana Andrews, have you ever been in love? And he says, yeah, Dame in Washington Heights once got a fox fur out of me. I thought that was just perfect. Oh,
there's so much stuff in Laura, too. Just what does he say? How innocent I look today when he's looking at himself in the mirror.
Yes. Waldo Lydecker has many of the greatest lines in any film. I've never met a subject so worthy of my attention. And he talks about himself. Anyway.
Yeah, but it's also great when Dana Andrews says to Laura, what is say for a beautiful, intelligent girl, you've managed to surround yourself with an incredible something of dopes.
Yeah, and, yeah. I distinctly remember the dopes
Yeah.
being crucial. Anyway, it's and anything written by Bill Bowers is
Hmm.
just going to be filled with great wisecracks. Or Frank Fenton, who wrote the final polish on Out of the Past, and provided all of the great dialogue in Out of the Past, in most of it in the voiceover.
Yeah.
He is largely, I think he's completely responsible for Mitchum's voiceover in that film, and it's just great stuff.
If I have
There's
to
a way to
die,
lose
I'm going to
more
die
slowly.
last.
Yeah, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die last. Awfully cold around the heart.
Yeah.
There's just, yeah, good stuff. Okay,
So where are we? So we
number
did
7.
number 7. Okay, here we go. And this is from Brent. In an early Ask Eddie installment, you mentioned that when certain shots or even dialogue reappear from film to film, it's often not a conscious thievery or quoting. It's just a result of everyone working together in an organic artistic movement. But with that said, how do you explain similarities in the shower scenes in The Seventh Victim being similar to shower scenes in Psycho? That's just one of many examples. In a time before home video, do you think there were cases where directors or screenwriters were actually running prints of older films or reading the scripts?
Yes, yes. There is no question about that. But um, I am. I think a lot of people, when they write about films and when they're very enthusiastic, um, I don't want to say critics, but just, they delve deep into the films. It's very pleasurable to imagine these links between films. But I will say that as an artist, I would resent it if somebody said, well, he got that or she got that from this other film, because there's no proof of it. Because there's and so what Brent is asking here, on the one hand, there's no question that everybody was aware of everyone else's work, because that's how you have an artistic movement. I mean, people are aware of it. And I have no question that that directors were saying, make it look like this. I saw what Nick Musaraka did in these Val Lewton pictures. Make it look like that. I saw, the John Alton cinematography. I want that look. They do that all the time. But when you're saying, why didn't Hitchcock basically borrow the shower scene from The Seventh Victim? My response would be, how interesting is it that it presages that? But I don't really think Alfred Hitchcock watched that movie and said, I'm going to recreate this. Because on the one hand, if the scene calls for a woman to be killed in the shower, how many ways can you shoot it? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I mean, the camera is either outside the shower or inside the shower. That's it.
Yeah.
It can be above the shower, like Hitchcock. I mean, let's face it. In Psycho, Hitchcock shot it every possible way it could be shot. I mean, the camera was everywhere in that bathroom that it could possibly be. But the idea of a figure entering the bathroom because you can't see them clearly through the shower curtain, that's been used a lot. And I don't think anybody invented that, as much as if you've written that scene, that's the best way to shoot it.
Mm-hmm.
That it's just scary. It's inherently scary to not know what's coming at you because there's a filmy curtain in between you. So I don't always think they're consciously borrowing stuff. And then, of course, you get many years in the future, and then it's obvious people are commenting on the original stuff, like what Tarantino does all the time. Everything's a quote, you
Yeah.
know. Uh, but that's kind of different. Um, so I find it very, that's why people always ask, "What's the first film noir?" And it's like you can't say. You're putting parameters around it so that people have a better understanding of why it started, when it was hugely popular, and why it kind of declined. But there's no way you can honestly say this was the one that inspired everything else,
Mhm.
because it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and I think too, just because something's sort of inspired by something doesn't mean that it doesn't have its own value. Like people are always saying, like about the original Halloween, oh, well, is because of Black Christmas. But I mean, Halloween's a completely different film. The only thing it has in common is it's around a holiday, and they're both slasher films. But let's face reality. I mean, the slasher genre was alive in Italy before it was in the United States, so it'd be more accurate to kind of say, well, that's really where the genesis of the slasher films come from. So, in Friday the 13th, I mean, the guy who produced it literally said to the screenwriter, "Do Halloween," because Halloween was so successful, but Friday the 13th, I mean, it's not really like Halloween at all. I mean, it's a whodunit. The first one is. So, you always want to go where, I think there's always, you want to follow up on whatever the box office success was. And I think that's what happened with Noir, is there was a bunch of box office success and they're cheap to make and there's plenty of material to work from. So yeah, people are going to keep making things the same style because it's making money. And then when it stops making money, they peter out.
Yeah, that's very true. And it's just Brent's question here was so granular in a sense of like see not just the trend in noir, but like specific
Yeah.
images and the approach to doing things.
Yeah.
Um,
And sometimes
you
it's
know,
cool.
which, and I will say, speaking for myself, like when I made my short film with Marcia Hunt, I mean, there were clearly moments when I would say, okay, this is the Stanley Kubrick shot. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is the Sam Fuller moment right here,
Yeah.
which is shorthand because I'm working with a crew
Yeah.
that all understand what I'm talking about, and and I don't think that's necessarily like I'm consciously copying, as much as I'm just saying this makes sense to me as the right way to shoot this. And it's like this thing that Kubrick did, or David Lynch did, or Sam Fuller did. I mean, I see these influences all the time. I mean, but it's not necessarily do it exactly like this because I'm trying to recreate that exact thing. I
And
don't
so,
know if that makes
and
sense.
sometimes it's an eye of the beholder, because I was listening to the Better Call Saul podcast, and their former editor Kelly Robinson was on it, and she said, "Oh, that it was a couple episodes ago, but when they were shooting Francesca going to make her phone call, pick up the phone call that wound up being from Saul, in the flash forward, and she's driving along and she's looking around and stuff."
Mm-hmm.
And so the director was on, and Kelly was like, "So I assume that was just from Psycho, because it's just like when Marion is like driving around." And he said, "No, that didn't even cross my mind for shooting it."
Good,
You
good.
know,
See, perfect analogy, and because I will add this before we move on. Sometimes I think that people are so pictorially obsessed when they read the visual symbols and identifiers and things in the films that's as far as it goes. It's like this shot looks like that shot. They're not thinking that it began in a script. And it's like
mm-hmm.
this is the scene we're depicting, and then you realize there's only a few ways you can show it, right? If you're
Yeah,
showing a woman driving in a car and she's suspicious that she's being followed,
yeah,
there's only a few ways you can shoot that, and then it's going to harken back to other scenes that you've seen that are just like it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they were paying homage or that they were copying it or they were being derivative. It's just like, and I'll tell you right now, if you're a writer and you want to kill somebody in a story in a shower, there is no
Yeah.
way it is not going to be compared to Psycho.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just automatic because that is the significance that that scene has in popular culture for obvious reasons. You know, I mean, there was no scene like it before, except in The Seventh Victim, but there wasn't. You know, it turned out to be a false alarm in the first film. Anyway, it's a really good question, a good subject that Brent brings up, and obviously, you know, one I think about a lot because in my you know. I know about this from personal experience, like creating stuff and you know, like when we do our posters for the Noir Festival, everything is derivative of something else because I'm trying to call up those touchstones that people recognize. You know, let's make this one look like a paperback book cover that was, you know, I remember this and it was composed this way, or this one will look like a pulp magazine, or you know. And so you're making these references consciously because it resonates with people. It calls up these associations that they have because they love this type of material. So in that respect, it's a very conscious thing on my part. But I'm sometimes suspect when film writers they connect the dots between films in a way that isn't necessarily true, I don't think. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
that. um, okay.
I've literally lost my place.
Okay, I
Sorry.
know where we are.
Okay.
In our sojourns through classic film territory, we have found many inexplicable connections between pictures, some within the bounds of noir, others bridging genres. To highlight a few examples, the names Steve, this is very similar to the last question.
That's why they're together.
The names Steve and Slim appearing in both To Have and Have Not and Crisscross, identical music passages in David Raxon's score to Whirlpool and Leonard Rosenman's score for Rebel Without a Cause, and in Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt and Cornell Wilde's Storm Fear, wherein Uncle Charlie re-enters the life of the adolescent protagonist, bringing conflict and irrevocable disillusionment with him. Now, this is from Elena and Lily in Sunnyside, New York, and I'm wondering if these are not the Elena and Lily that used to live out here in California, not far from where I spent all my summers. They wrote me a couple of really fabulous letters that are. I'm going to use Elena and Lily. Forgive me if you're not the same Elena and Lily, but how could it not be? And they're teenagers. These are teenagers.
Oh, okay.
And so this harkens back to the first question that we had about how do I feel about, you know, noir being passed along to a next generation. If Elena and Lily are part of that next generation, we're going to be okay because they are uh, fabulously eloquent young women. But what they're talking about here, while it's very similar to what Brent was talking about, they're getting into what I was saying about there's a writer here. You know, it's not just the way it's shot, it's like, what is it that's happening? So, obviously, in Howard Hawks's To Have and Have Not, Slim was used because that was the nickname of his wife. That was his wife's nickname. So that was a gag that he was putting in the film. And I cannot remember right now. I have the original novel on which Crisscross is based. It's called Crisscross, but it was written in the and I honestly think that those are the names of the characters that they just were using, you know, repurposing them from the original novel. So who's to say what came first? And it's not like Steve is a you know, uncommon name. Now, somebody cribbing somebody's score, um, you know, I'm not going to comment about that. And then the connection like between Shadow of a Doubt and Storm Fear. Um, yeah, there are all sorts of that story, the outsider returning home,
Hmm.
uh, has been used many times.
Yeah.
There's a film that I'm going to be showing pretty soon on Noir Alley called "Walk Softly, Stranger," where Joseph Cotton essentially plays Uncle Charlie again.
Yeah.
And same deal. He comes into the town in Ohio, and it's like, who is this guy? He seems to be up to no good, and he cons his way into convincing Alida Valli that he's an old friend from her childhood, and he's no good. He's up to no good. But you see these plots recycled time and again, and
Well, and the Searchers,
uh,
the John Ford film. I mean, you have Ethan coming back, in this time of crisis, but there's all this stuff that happens because of that,
yes,
and all
yes,
these things
yes,
sort
I
of come
see.
to light because of that as well. So yeah,
Right.
that's just when we were talking about someone coming back, that was like where my mind went immediately.
Yes, and of course, Paul Schrader, when he wrote Hardcore,
Hmm.
it's the Searchers. He freely said, I was updating the Searchers and making it a modern story, and the daughter disappears into the pornographic movie business instead of captured by an Indian tribe or something.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, this is how it works, and I will say to Elena and Lily, it is great fun finding these connections.
Yeah.
What it all means in the end, I honestly don't know, but it is great fun noting it and saying, like, um, we've got a story coming up in the magazine, kind of a trifle, about elevator operators in noir, like how many elevator operators there are in noir, and like how many of them are played by Elijah Cook Jr. Right? I think he did it like 3 times or something, and you just see these things repeating over and over again.
Oh, I had so my tax preparer, my old tax preparer, used to have an office in the Flood building, which is where Dashiell Hammett, when he worked for Pinkertons, that's where he worked. So I always
Right.
like was thinking about that. And from actually, it's funny because from his window you could see like on a building nearby where someone had painted Spade and Archer on a window. Anyway, but I was like getting on the lift there, and it's very old fashioned looking. That they maintained the building really beautifully, and I just saw someone like in a cap at the corner of my eye, and I almost told them what floor I was going to, because like for a minute it was like I really slipped into like this is like there'd be an elevator operator on this modern lift. I'm glad I didn't say anything. I would have been embarrassed as hell, but
That's because you live in a different world, and happens to all of us. It's pretty funny. One of the things that I'm really sorry that I know Alan Rhodey ended up doing when they finally released, I think in Australia, the Blu-ray of Sorry Wrong Number. Um, I was a little disappointed because I did an audio commentary for that film years and years ago, and then Paramount never released it. They never released the film, and they had a wonderful guy named Gary Leva had done all these special features for that, including recreating the radio show. They had the original Agnes Moorehead radio show. They recreated it again so he could shoot a documentary about how a radio show was actually produced at that time, and they redid Sorry Wrong Number. And then I did the audio commentary, which I loved doing because Sorry Wrong Number, which I think is a great and very undervalued film, contains more anachronisms about American culture than any other movie of the period, I think. It's almost like the writers strategically knew all of this stuff is going to be gone in 20 years. So it's like every single scene has something in it that is gone from the culture. I mean, the soda fountain pharmacy where they go to make the phone calls, the bingo nights in the hotel lobbies, doctors making house calls, uh, bringing the telephone to somebody's table in a nightclub. I mean, it's one scene after another that it's I don't want to say it's so nostalgic, but it's pretty fascinating. Anyway, I don't know why I brought that up, but it just something you said triggered that, and I thought, man, that movie is just incredible in that way. So
Yeah. And also people should look up the original broadcast of that with that they did on, I guess it was Suspense. It was written by Lucille Fletcher, who's one of the greatest radio playwrights. Agnes Moorehead's amazing in it.
yes,
And it's kind of fun because Lucille Fletcher actually, the inspiration for that really annoying character that she is was she was at the butcher's and there was this really awful woman in line in front of her. So she started to sit on this idea of killing this woman. So anyway.
yeah, that I love that story,
Yeah.
and it's only 22 minutes long, right? The show is 22 minutes long, and is and an interesting bit of trivia for people who might not know it is that Lucille Fletcher was married to Bernard Herrmann.
That's correct.
The composer. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And another piece of trivia about that, the first broadcast of that with of Sorry Wrong Number was when they did it on the East Coast, there was a flub at the very end, which is of course the payoff. So when they did the West Coast, they did it for the West Coast, that was corrected. So that's, and the West Coast was the one that most people have heard, but they still have the East Coast one because I listened to it one time. But yeah,
Interesting.
his shows used to be done twice in case people didn't know, for the East Coast and the West Coast.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Okay, so I don't know why we got off on Sorry Wrong Number, but
Sorry Wrong Number for all it's worth.
Yeah, weird. Okay, now you go next. You go next.
Okay. And this is for our friend Doug in Silver Springs. And I know you're going to love this. I believe that Ben Hecht deserves just as much credit for creating the language of noir as Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler. What's both your takes on the first three film versions of Hecht and MacArthur's 1928 play, The Front Page? Milestone's 1931, Howard Hawks' 40, and Billy Wilder's 74. And do either of you consider any of these versions to be noir?
Interesting observation. Doug, I don't think you read my book.
Yeah.
In Dark City, The Lost World of Film Noir, the new edition, not the original edition, the new edition, I go out of my way to credit Ben Hecht with sort of creating the language of noir in the Front Page. I mean, that was not just in the Front Page, but then he comes to Hollywood and he writes Underworld and he writes Scarface. And, obviously when he was working as a newspaperman in Chicago, he soaked up all the language of the streets and everything, and he was a past master at it. Interestingly, when he made his own movies, you've seen some of those, right, Anne?
I'm sorry. Yes. I took my ex, who I talk about all the time, Brendan, and we saw Spectre of the Rose. And he still brings up the stabbing dance, just like randomly. He'll talk about the stabbing dance.
The stabbing dance.
A huge impression on him.
Yes. But that Ben Hecht's language in the movies he directed himself is totally different.
Yeah.
Than in the films that he wrote for other people. I mean, it's very florid, and it's, oh my God, he's trying to create some sort of weird street Shakespeare for the 20th century kind of thing, and it's totally unreal. And I know a lot of people who watch those movies and they just reject them out of hand because they can't get past the language, right?
Yeah.
But then this is the same guy that wrote Kiss of Death and Where the Sidewalk Ends and Notorious and all these great movies. So yeah, I can't comment on the Billy Wilder version because I know I saw it when it came out, but I haven't seen it since then. So I don't know about that. And I would say that the original version of the front page is really good. It was restored recently, the Lewis Milestone version. Very good, and it has certainly has some noirish qualities to it, but it's funny as hell too. And the Howard Hawks film, come on, it's sensational, right? But not in any noirish way in particular. Although the whole idea of they're going to execute this guy, I mean, it's so cynical. The
Yeah.
front page
I
is
mean, it
so
really
cynical
is.
that that it certainly has part of the noir DNA in it. How corrupt everybody is, and they're going to railroad this guy and execute him. And there's some pretty progressive stuff in there, you know, uh, but I don't really see it as being a film noir, any of the versions. But I do give Ben Hecht his due in the book for what he did in terms of the language that became synonymous with noir.
Yeah, and I actually saw the 74 one first when I was a kid, which made a big impression on me. I don't know. I mean, it was just something about that story. I just remember being really like kind of mesmerized by it. And then, I mean, I really am fond of the second version, obviously by Hawks. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's just great.
And it
But I
was
haven't
very,
seen the first
very,
one.
it was, and you got to give Howard Hawks credit. It was very, very inspired to turn Hildy into a woman.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And it made sense too, especially with the whole thing with the girlfriend. Like that made much more sense for that to have been a sob sister doing, or not sob sister, but a female journalist to be doing. Like that was more believable to me.
yeah, absolutely. And a quick shout out. Um, I've been watching a few Cary Grant movies lately, and it's interesting how great a comedic actor he is.
Yeah.
Just incredibly great. More so than a lot of comedians at the time who, like Bob Hope, Red Skelton, guys like this. It's like they don't have 1/10 of the timing that Cary Grant had doing comedy on
Uh-huh.
screen. I mean, he's not a comedian,
Yeah.
but as a comic actor, maybe the best. I mean, he is just so freaking funny.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I consider him. Like if I think about Cary Grant, I think of him as a comedic actor.
But
I
then,
mean,
but then
not
you
that he
see
wasn't,
him
I
in,
mean, notorious,
yeah,
not
you see him
notorious,
in, yeah, he's a notorious, of
notorious, no,
course. Yeah.
notorious, but and he's a complete bastard in that. I mean, it
Yeah.
says something because I hate his character so much, and that's because he gave a great performance, and I love him in Suspicion. And when you go back and read the book, which I highly, highly recommend, that's based on, it's a great book. He just nails that character, and especially kind of because he is sort of emotionally mature in it, in a way that sociopaths are. I mean, obviously they changed the story for the
Mhm.
movie, but if you go back and read the book, it's like this epic view of just how bad codependence can go, where she's
Mm.
almost maternal to him in a way, to the point of, well, I don't want to give it away, but yeah, go find the book. It's great.
Yeah, but that's all. I just
Yeah,
think that Cary Grant is the greatest.
he is. He's amazing.
We'll
Yeah.
just leave it at that. Okay.
What else is there say about him?
Okay.
Okay, so is it my turn to read a question?
I can't remember.
I can't remember.
I think it's me.
Okay, and
Uh,
this
okay, Dave in Pie Creek
Australia.
is still on his quest to find the first Australian film noir. Okay, now I'm going to assume there isn't a question in here because if there is, I don't know the answer. Uh, okay, so having just finished watching all of the Ask Eddies on YouTube,
Thank you.
glad you have a life, Dave. I think I have a feeling for what might or might not qualify for noir, and I have a proposal. The film has, to paraphrase Eddie, an internal spiral to destruction. Are you okay there, Ann?
I'm just so thankful that you said that before I took the drink of water. I just would have had a spit take. So,
It would have been good. We could have
that
had we
was
could have had that
close.
on a permanent loop and just play it over and over again. Okay, the film has an internal spiral to destruction, and to paraphrase Anne, each character in turn is destroyed by their own character flaws. So, given that, Dave in Pie Creek is suggesting Jeddah, a 1955 film directed by Charles Chauvel, it looks like, with a screenplay by Charles and Elsa Chauvel. Thank you very much for indicating the screenwriters as well, Dave. All of the characters come to unfortunate ends, mostly through good intentions. Even the homme fatale, Marbuk, just wants to do the right thing. Um, uh, I'm not sure how this sentence plays. If noir, then it's an in a lonely place kind. And then he throws in a thing for Imogen Sarah Smith's book In Lonely Places, and he's wondering if the Australian outback can qualify. Anyway, he asked if either of us have seen this movie. Obviously, I have not. I don't suppose you have. Have you?
No, but I want to. I'm really glad that they actually that'd be kind of fun too. If you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube, just comment if you've seen this movie because I'm really interested to see if other people have seen it and what they thought of it because it does
Again,
really sound interesting.
It is Jeddah, Jedda. I don't know why, but my image has gone fuzzy.
Yeah, you're
Do
really
I look
blurry.
fuzzy. I don't know why.
Very blurry.
I don't know what happened there. Very strange. I'm not sure why that happened. I'm using a better camera here.
Hmm.
Maybe I was just moving around or something. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
it should come back into focus. It should come back into focus. It usually does.
Well, I'm totally
Just
ill-equipped to deal with this on the fly. So let's try this. Let's see what happens. I'm gonna. Oh, hell with it. People just listen anyway. They don't need to be staring at me. So I'm gonna leave it. We're just gonna move on.
Okay.
Okay. Antoinette. Yeah, Antoinette. I'm going to just read this.
Okay.
She asked if I was able to try Uncle Nearest whiskey. Sadly, Antoinette, the answer is no. I have not yet found a bottle of Uncle Nearest whiskey, so I cannot tell you what I think of it. But I will keep searching. When I find it in my local liquor store, I will buy it and let you know.
Okay. This is from John. My question for Eddie is about the Woody Allen film Crimes and Misdemeanors. I see this film as satisfying many noir elements. It's very dark, no heroes, and most importantly, deals with the question, does good triumph over evil? Stars Mountain Landau, Jerry Orbach, Jelka Houston. This guy does anguish over this question, and there is no good ending. Please put to Eddie. I gotta get his take on it.
Yeah, Woody Allen has actually made. I'm back. I don't know what happened, but I'm suddenly snapped back into focus. It was mentioning Woody Allen. That's what obviously what did it. Yeah, he's a big noir fan, and he has certainly made several films that I think qualify as film noir, not just Crimes and Misdemeanors, but this movie Cassandra's Dream with Colin Farrell and Ewan McGregor. I think that's very much a noir film. And I got to tell you my one funny Woody Allen story. I know you're not supposed to mention his name these days, but I'm going to tell this story. I'm going to try to remember what the film was. But years ago, somebody came up to me at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood and said, "Hey, did you see you're in the new Woody Allen movie?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Just go see it. I bet you'll see what I mean. You're in the new Woody Allen movie." And it was Hollywood Ending. I think that's the name of the movie, where he plays a film director suffering psychosomatic blindness. When he finally gets a movie project to put together, he starts to go blind. And there's a scene in the movie where Mark Rydell plays his agent, and they're in Woody Allen's apartment, where he's admitting to the guy, "I'm going blind." And my book, Dark City, is on the top of a pile of film books on his coffee table, and it's well thumbed with lots of post-it notes sticking out of it, and that amused me greatly because in the movie he is remaking an old film noir, City
Yeah.
That Never Sleeps. That's the movie that Woody Allen is remaking in his film Hollywood Ending. So I'm going to assume that I would just like to think that there was a reason why my book was at the top of the pile
Mm-hmm.
of film books. I don't know if that's true. He may have had nothing to do with it. It may have been the set
The set
decorator or
dresser,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, but that amused me.
Okay, so this is our final question, and this is Jeff from Brooklyn. This is a fantasy question. Is there a character in a film noir movie that you would like to portray? The name of the movie, the actor's name, the character's name, and why would you like to play this character?
Do you have an answer for this one?
Yeah, I do have an answer for this one.
Okay.
None. I am a terrible actor. Every time I've done it, I've hated it because I've been pushing a couple things by friends. I would never do it.
But
Ever.
it's a fantasy. But it's a fantasy question, Anne.
Yeah. So if I could actually have talent and ability, what would I
There are a lot of people in show business, Anne, who are making movies, and that wasn't part of their thing. I mean, they don't have any talent whatsoever. They're still making movies. So we're going to throw that one out.
Oh, I think it would be fun to play Phyllis,
Oh, okay. Wow.
from Double Indemnity. Just, I think more to walk in Barbara Stanwyck's shoe. Plus, she's fucking crazy, and I like that.
Well, she is crazy, but she doesn't really show it, and
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
very, very cool in the movie.
yeah.
I have I could see you in like I see you more as the sensible Eve Arden
Oh,
character.
I would love to be her in Unfaithful. That's like
Yeah,
one of
yeah,
my all-time favorite. I love that character, and I definitely am that person. And the person that a guy friend comes to and said, and I'm like, are you kidding me?
yeah, yeah. I could totally see you in that kind of role.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Casting in films is a for movies is an amazing thing because I think you try to cast people who really are emblematic of the character that they're playing, so that the acting is almost secondary. And it's something that really interests me. I really enjoyed reading David Mamet's book on acting, uh, where he talks about this and explains why he thinks that like somebody like Gary Cooper is on film is like just as good, if not better, than an Olivier or somebody who's a classically trained actor, or like a Jimmy Stewart, where the whole secret is to not do much. It's
Mm-hmm.
to just kind of play the character, but just let it come right through you, and you're very relaxed and confident in yourself, that you don't have to act. I think that's true. Anyway, I don't know what that has to do with anything. I don't really know if there's a character that I would want to portray. I mean, I'd want a big death scene. I know that.
Yeah.
So to me, that's like the whole point, right? It's like you got to have a good death scene. So um,
It's just crazy why you keep getting killed on all the posters for North City.
yeah,
You're always like a body.
I am. I am. They're not. I'm not dead in all of them. There are a few where I'm alive. Right, number 10 where I'm just lurking in the shadows, but I'm alive, and number 12 I'm alive behind Evie opening the curtain and that. But anyway, I I don't know if I have an answer for this because I don't. I just don't know. I know that's a total cop out, but what do you think? What roles should I play? You tell me. I just
Well, I think you should definitely play like a newspaper man. I can see
okay.
you in a Lee Tracy type role.
Okay, good. I'll buy that. So I could I'd just be one of the guys. I'd be the Paul Stewart character in Deadline USA. Harry Thompson, the sports writer, who
Yeah,
goes
yeah,
in.
there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. That makes sense. I can do that. But that's the only Paul Stewart role that I could effectively play.
Yes.
I
Well,
can't
he's a
be
great
as
actor.
I can't be as menacing as Paul Stewart is. I don't think I have that in me. Anyway,
Eh,
um, I hate to disappoint you, Jeff from Brooklyn. It was an interesting question, but I just I don't know. I don't know. So we're done
That
for
was
this
it.
installment?
That was our last one.
Okay, very good.
Um,
But I know there are a lot more questions because I've seen questions coming in and I've glanced at a
yes.
few of them and there's some good ones. So we'll get
Yeah,
back to it
just to
pretty
let
quick.
everybody know, from when you send in your question, it's usually about 3 episodes before we get to it. And we're now on a regular schedule of every 2 weeks, which will help also for us to get a little more caught up on the questions because
Yes.
we're now on a regular basis, so you guys know. And then every other week, the weeks that we're not on, I'm releasing a short. So, hey, is that Charlotte? Did she just come in
Yes.
frame? Yeah,
She came in earlier and was very stealthy about it, but that was a big excited jump onto the couch there.
yeah, she wanted everybody to see her rump before
There,
we figured out. So anyway, those are always put up on our YouTube channel. And so if you are watching on YouTube, I know I said this before, but if you can subscribe and like and share, it really does help to get the word out of that. And also, North City starts tomorrow. But if you can't come out to North City to support us, you can always donate to us at filmnoirfoundation.org/contribute. And if you sign up on our email list and donate $20 or more, then we do send you the digital version of North City Magazine.
correct. And then yes, and then you can
And
buy
then
the
put a
print
reminder
edition
on your
if you wish.
calendar.
And yes, put a reminder on your calendar. Pick your favorite actor, actress, director, whatever,
Writer.
on their birthday. Make a note to re-up your donation to the Film Noir Foundation. That would be great. So I'm just going to sign off by pointing because I know that this is a slightly different view of my office than usual, and people are probably going to ask. So I'm just going to point out that right there
Yeah.
is a German poster for the movie Highway 301, and I'm going to do this so that you can see there's Steve Cochran, his
Oh,
leering
there he is.
face. There he is, right there, Cochran, Steve Cochran, right there.
Yeah.
And then over here that's John Garfield and Ida Lupino in Out of the Fog.
Oh,
Just a
yeah.
very nice studio photo that I have. And then these are paintings done by some friends. That's a litho of Marlene Dietrich right back here. That's it. We're done. Just as people had said before, can you give us a tour? So I thought that was just a tiny little tour.
And you can now see Charlotte's little face too.
There, now she's better. She's ready for her close up now.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, Anne, always a pleasure.
Yeah.
And as soon as we're done with this, we'll schedule the next one.
Exactly. So we'll see you all back here in 2 weeks because we're gonna hopefully keep to our 2 week schedule.
Excellent. Thanks everybody for the questions. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much, and see you in 2 weeks. And go see Eddie at the Music Box Theater if you're in Chicago.
Yep.